and our weekly video segment to take you into the back shelves of your local video store, back where it says horror videos, and where kids are devouring some awful films that we call the video nasties.
Are you freebasing? Inquiring minds want to know.
I have to break free from this culture of mechanical reproductions and the thick incrustations dying on the surface.
Fuck the prime time, bitch!
Monmouth in the flesh.
The pain, I can assure you, will be exquisite. As for our deaths, come with me and be immortal.
We have such sights to show you.
Gotta return some videotapes.
Hello, horror hounds, and welcome to the It Slays podcast. I'm your humble host, Rowan.
And this is a feral cat who's trying to chew through garbage bags in a dumpster, Mike.
And last but not least, it's Colton.
And we are back. We have Colton back now.
Woo!
You know, you guys may have missed him. We kicked him out last episode, kicked him to the curb, handed him over. Every horror movie on Netflix paid us basically to use him. It was a...
Oh, I thought you were going to say to get rid of Steven. I was going to say,
paid us in Steven.
But yeah, so we're recording this on a Tuesday, and I think that every horror movie on Netflix episode, or wait, it's not Tuesday, it's Thursday, guys.
It's Thursday.
Yeah, we're behind the scenes. We're supposed to record Tuesday, but Rowan just dropped the ball on that one.
Drop the jackhammer.
That's right. There's some construction work going on, so Rowan had to let everyone down and record 2 days later. But back to what I was saying, every horror movie on Netflix dropped an episode. Do you want to, talk briefly about that, Colton?
Yeah, sure. So we did, what we were calling, I guess, the wife swap or the crossover event. So yeah, I went over and I was with Patrick and Chris, and Depressed Chris, if you've seen the Instagram post or the Twitter post, which is pretty great. And yeah, I was featuring on their episode about Hush. So this should be dropping this Sunday. So if you haven't listened to every horror movie on Netflix's episode on Hush yet, make sure to go back and do so. Check it out on their podcast feed or on their Instagram page. And we have a better discussion on it, I think, than our show. We don't call it a Lifetime movie, that's for sure. So if you want to hear a respectful discussion of Hush, maybe check out every horror movie on Netflix's episode.
Listen, you're acting like calling something a Lifetime movie is a drag, which it isn't.
Bro, you guys were talking about animal genitalia 5 minutes into the episode. I was like, man, I'm not there. Things go so far off the rails so quick. It was fun to listen to, though. I'm not gonna lie.
Good.
So I can't promise no animal genitalia in this episode, but I'll try my hardest.
God.
So let's talk about what we've been watching, what we've been reading, what we've been listening to, whatever. What have you been consuming media-wise? Colton, you've been gone for a while. What's up?
I have, but I kind of feel like everything that I've been watching has already been discussed already, either on Now Slaying through our reviews of X and Fresh, or when I was on every horror movie on Netflix. So I was kind of racking my brain, and there's a couple of things I can maybe mention. I don't think I've discussed The Batman anywhere yet. And I know, Rowan, you've seen it a couple of times. You're, I think, a pretty big fan of it as well.
I am.
Mike's rolling his eyes. Are you not a fan of The Batman, Mike? Come on.
I'm just how has Ro seen this multiple times already? It blows my mind.
He's found 6 hours in his busy schedule to watch Robert Pattinson brood and mope around. But yeah, I thought it was pretty excellent overall. I thought the funeral procession inspired score was pretty great. I really like Pattinson's take as Batman, where he's vengeful and reckless and just generally unwell, which, it just felt different to me. There was a different portrayal of Batman and Bruce Wayne than what we've seen with Christian Bale or Ben Affleck. And Zoe Kravitz, I don't know how I can get this far without mentioning her. She's excellent as Catwoman. Yeah, and as is the rest of the cast, Colin Farrell as Penguin, Jeffrey Wright as Commissioner Gordon, Paul Dano as the Riddler. I think they're all great. That being said, there's a couple of little small gripes for the movie, and hopefully I don't piss off Rowan too much with this. I think The cinematography is absolutely gorgeous, but it is so gorgeous and so perfect that it is almost too perfect, in my opinion. This is a weird critique, but I find that some of the action scenes feel a little stiff at times, just a little bit, where it feels like everything is shot where it's locked down on a tripod or with a steady cam rig, where it's like I didn't feel like I was in the thick of things. I didn't feel like I was in the middle of the action or the chaos at times, where I was like, shit, I just wish it was a little bit rougher at points. And I do think the Riddler's riddles were either unfair at times or a little bit stupid. And it wasn't enough at the time to take me out of the movie. But like in retrospect, when I was thinking over them, it kind of was like, yeah, that's, you know, a little bit of a issue, which, you know, if when I go to rewatch it, I'm not sure if it'll hold up quite as well. Yeah, I mean, for me, it's no The Dark Knight, but it's probably my second favorite Batman movie. Rowan, I see you over there. You want to say something about it, so I know this is what I've been watching, but go ahead. What did you think of the Batman?
Yeah, I also have it as I think now that I've tempered down, I've had like a week, you know, or so to process it. I have it as my second favorite Batman as well.
Oh, you reverted.
I reverted. Originally, I came out, I wrote Colton, I'm like, it's the best Batman.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it could be 1A, 1B, maybe not number 2, but just there's always a special place in my heart for Batman Returns, which I feel is the ultimate Batman. I think everything you said pretty much is, you know, how I feel about it. Like, it's beautifully done. Probably one of the best scores, period, I've heard in a long time.
It's really good. I've heard people complaining about that they use it too much, which when I was in the moment, I didn't feel that, but like, you know, obviously they do use the same 4 notes over and over again. So I don't know, maybe when I rewatch it, it'll annoy me, but I loved it the first time as well.
It's catchy, man. It's catchy. Like when I came out of the theater, I was like, that's all I thought about.
Yeah, it's very much like the Imperial March or something, like Vader's theme, right? So,
yeah, fantastic.
Yeah, I was going to say, other than that, I crammed in a movie this afternoon called Windfall. It was released last week on Netflix to mixed reviews. And honestly, I'm kind of shocked by that because I thought the movie overall was pretty great. It's a single location thriller with kind of like a Hitchcockian vibe to it. It stars Jason Segel, Lily Collins, and Jesse Plemons. I don't know if you guys are Jesse Plemons fans. I'm a really big Jesse Plemons fan. But
I heard about this. Yeah.
Yeah, basically it's about Jason Segel's character breaking into a tech billionaire's vacation home. And when he's in there, he realizes that the owners had an unplanned getaway. So he kind of has to take them hostage in their own phone or their own home and kind of, you know, figure out how to get out of it, you know? So it has a really quirky sense of humor to it. And I love just watching kind of things spiral out of control for the character. Like, I thought it was a lot, like, really fun to watch. It's, you know, it's nothing flashy, but I thoroughly enjoyed it. And, you know, like I said, I'm a huge Jesse Plemons fan, so maybe take my opinion with a grain of salt because he's definitely the best part of the movie. But if you're a Jesse Plemons fan, maybe check it out. I think it was pretty great. Yeah, and I mean, I've been watching other things, but it's honestly stuff that's probably not worth mentioning on air. Like, you know, it's kind of mediocre stuff or pretty boring. So I'm not going to do an in-depth discussion of Survivor. So I suppose I'll throw it over to Mike and see what he's been watching or what he's been consuming.
Well, I will do an in-depth discussion of the current season of Drag Race, which is one of the many things that I have been watching. I'll spare you all that, except to say Willow Pill is my everything. But yeah, I've been watching that, and I finally watched, I know it's like a trashy thriller, A Simple Favor, which came out a few years ago with Blake Lively.
Yeah, I've seen it. Yeah.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it. We were just looking for something kind of like light and fun to watch over the weekend, so we watched that. And then actually right after that, for whatever reason, we started watching Jujutsu Kaisen, the anime. And yeah. I don't watch a lot of anime. Like, when I get into it, but it's like I watch a very select few, and I haven't watched a new one in forever. I usually just go rewatch like Sailor Moon and shit, but we're like chewing through that and really enjoying it. So
that's the one with the movie in theaters right now, right?
It is, yeah. I think that's why we decided to start watching it, because it was all on Crunchyroll, and my friend's like, "Oh, there's a free, trial. Let's do it."
Gotcha.
And other than that, I've been reading the book Behind Her Eyes by Sarah Pinborough, which is a kind of, like I'm going to say trashy thriller. It's not like literature, but they made a Netflix series of it. Well, actually, I think it was originally on something in Britain first, and Netflix decided to bring it over and slap their name on it like they do with everything and pretend it's theirs. But it was like a limited series thing last year, I think. And it was really, 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 really good. A lot of people don't like it and think it's garbage, but it's one of those movies like, if you like it, you really like it.
So is the series, is it just called Behind Her Eyes as well? Or is
Behind Her Eyes, yeah.
Yeah, okay. No, I haven't even heard of it. Okay.
And it kind of came and went like with no fanfare, and I was actually thoroughly disgusted that like so much stupid pedestrian bullshit gets like hyped up and everybody's talking about it. And like, oh my god, you gotta watch this. Like, okay, don't act like you're giving me some hidden treasure. This is some fucking shit that Netflix has been hyping on the like homepage of their app for a month. Like, you're not discovering some treasure here anyway.
Hidden gem, yeah.
Right? But anyway, and then this just kind of like comes and goes with no fanfare. I was thoroughly pissed off, but it's very good, so I decided to read the book because I wanted something, a little less depressing and, whatever.
Now,
so
Mike,
that's what I've been at.
Do you usually rate movies you love only a 2.5 out of 5 on Letterboxd? I'm just curious with that.
Sometimes.
I saw that review come through and I was like, man, I think I liked it a little bit more than that. I wouldn't say that I loved it, but
I can recognize that I don't think something's technically a really good movie, but that I really love it for reasons that are very subjective.
All right.
That's what I'm saying. Just because I give something a 2 doesn't mean that I don't like it. Actually, sometimes the opposite. Sometimes it means that I quite like it.
Yeah, I think that's the same review as the best action movie of all time.
Yeah, exactly.
Same review.
Exactly. Just look at Predator. That's all I have to say. Predator is like the kind of barometer against which to judge all of my other Letterboxd reviews.
Yeah, all right. It's like the cipher to your reviews. Nice.
Exactly.
Nice.
Yeah. Ro, what have you done other than the Batman?
So other than the Batman twice, I know it's sad, and it was like pretty much like I saw it on a Thursday and then I saw it on a Sunday, so I didn't even like wait a grand amount of time. So I'm just looking. I had to see what else I watched. So of course I got home from watching the Batman. I had to revisit Batman Forever.
Oh my god, yes. Can we talk about how that soundtrack needs to go on streaming because it's a masterpiece? Go ahead.
I was a little more positive on it than I think I may have been in the past. Kind of the beginning of, the collection of Batman Forever and Batman and Robin, so a little more vibrant Batman and selling toys.
They're the camp Batmans. They're the, like, throwback to, like, original campy Batman.
I think it kind of holds up. Like, Jim Carrey, I thought gave...
Look at the cast!
Great cast. It's a great cast. It's still fun. It's the right amount of camp. I finally saw Spider-Man No Way Home. I was like the last person in Earth, in the universe, to see it.
Apparently, yeah. I think that thing's like approaching $2 billion in the COVID era. So
yeah, although I say that, in the theater, there was 2 other people going to see it, so...
Oh, really? Okay, it's basically a sold-out show.
Yeah.
3 months after it came out already.
I thoroughly enjoyed that. It was probably my favorite Spider-Man movie of, like, these new Spider-Man movies.
I'd get down with that, yeah.
Yeah, and I think it's one of the better outings, like, in the MCU, really. I think it was fun. It was just a good time. And like Colton said, like, we saw X, and you can hear what we thought about that on that episode, and I rewatched Fresh. And then the last 2 I rewatched Captain Marvel the other day, just because I couldn't overly remember it. I saw it in the theater, and...
Brie Larson, right?
Yes.
Yeah, no, because there's Miss Marvel coming out. I was just making sure I had the right one in my head. Yeah.
Brie Larson's Captain Marvel, which, is mediocre. It was one of the...
I'm not a big fan of it either.
Wasn't a great one. I rewatched The Return of the Living Dead the other night for something to put on, which is always a great time. Amazing soundtrack. Just, one of the all-time zombie films. And then really the only other thing is I finally finished my Mandalorian watching, and I'm on Boba Fett right now.
Did you make it through Boba Fett? You were messaging me about it, and I only ever made it 1 episode in, so did you make it further than that, or?
I'm on episode 2, I think, right now.
Okay.
might have to take a break. I might be like Star Warsing myself out as a guy that generally isn't like crazy about Star Wars. And you know, I think I had said to Colton, like when messaging him with The Mandalorian, like it was good. I don't know, like I guess. My theory with all that kind of stuff, it's kind of the same how I feel most of the Marvel like television stuff is, you know, I think these Disney Plus's format has just like kind of ruined the specialness of the movies, where like you're getting Star Wars content like every 3 weeks now. Like it's just overbearing, and there's just like at some point you just don't care anymore.
And honestly, the Marvel stuff is even worse now, where they have like 4 TV shows a year and like 3 movies as well. It's a lot to take in.
Yeah, I have to say it's just so funny, because I was thinking about that earlier when you were talking about going to see Spider-Man and it making so much money and how I haven't seen it. And I was thinking how, I don't want to know how many years ago, but like before Rowan moved away, when we would make a big outing every time there was a Marvel movie or any superhero movie, you know, DC, anything really. And, you know, we'd put on our nerdy t-shirts and go and line up early and blah, blah, blah. And there'd always be like 3 or 4 of us going, and like never missed a movie. We'd get together and watch them all like in a run, like we did that at Drew's house one night. And I'm at the point now where there's just so much of it that like I haven't seen a Marvel movie probably since that last like Endgame or whatever. Like, I haven't seen any of the TV shows. I'm just so absolutely burned out on it because there's so much of it, and I can't anymore. I can't do it. It's like,
you're not alone with that though. Like a lot of my friends as well jumped out kind of after Endgame, and like we used to do the same thing whenever there'd be like a blockbuster, like big event movie, DC or Marvel, and you know, a couple of other franchises. Everyone would flock to the theaters, but I went to see the Batman all by myself. You know, usually that'd be a movie with 8 or 9 or 10 friends, but now it's just like all the superhero stuff, it's too saturated. Even my nerdy friends don't care to go see it in theaters anymore. They'll just wait for it to hit HBO Max or Crave or whatever, right?
Yeah. It's definitely like a burnout thing for sure.
Yeah, for sure.
I think it's probably time to get into the main event. So we'll get into the trailer. The film was my pick this week, Silent Hill from 2006. We'll play the trailer, and then we'll be back with that delicious bio.
Honey, sometimes when you go to sleep, you talk about a place.
I don't remember.
Can you tell me the best way to get to Silent Hill?
Why you want to go there?
On April 21st, a mother looking for answers will discover a truth
Hey! Where's my child?
Only the demon knows where she is.
too terrifying to believe.
What's happening? Who are you?
I am the Reaper.
Silent Hill. Rated R.
Silent Hill was directed by Christoph Gans and written by Roger Avery, and the story is as follows. After her adopted daughter Sharon begins suffering from a series of recurring nightmares, Rose travels to an enigmatic town called Silent Hill in search of answers. The two quickly become separated, and Rose finds herself in a dangerous place where all of one's nightmares become real. Rose enlists the help of police officer Sybil, the town's quirky residents, and a fanatical cult in order to give her the best shot at seeing her daughter again, but soon learns that once you arrive, you never leave Silent Hill.
Dun, dun, dun.
Cue the spooky music.
Cue the amazing music of Silent Hill. So, first experiences, is this our first time seeing this film? And also, this, it's not a secret. I mean, if you're listening to this episode, you probably know Silent Hill are a series of video games on the PlayStation. So maybe also our experience with the video games. Have we played the video games? We'll start with you, Colton.
Yeah, so in terms of the video games, I kind of go back to probably the early 2000s, whenever Silent Hill 2 came out. I didn't play it myself, but sleepovers at a friend of mine's house on the weekend, I'd go over, and his parents were always playing Silent Hill. So we would watch them play, and they'd just be like smoking nonstop playing Silent Hill. But I remember specifically Silent Hill 2 was so scary that it made his mom break out in hives. So Silent Hill has like a pretty prominent place in like my mind as a child. Like this was kind of like around the time when I was watching Ghost Ship and stuff like that, just kind of tiptoeing into horror. And I remember watching Silent Hill 2 them play through it, and it like frightened the shit out of me. So in my mind, Silent Hill 2 is a pretty prominent video game franchise. I have only ever played a little bit of Silent Hill. I think it's like 4. It's Homecoming. It was on like the Xbox at the time, which is a very different game. I think you're like a veteran in that, so you're kind of like fighting all the monsters hand to hand and using guns a lot more. It's kind of not like creeping around in a foggy town. But yeah, I'm pretty familiar with the games, but mostly just through watching people play them, not really playing them too much myself. And in terms of the movie, it's a similar thing. I was familiar with the game, so when Silent Hill in 2006 came to my hometown, probably 6 to 7 months after the rest of the world got to see it in this shitty theater, I would assume my friends and I all rushed out to see it. I remember seeing it at least one other time before this time, and I think it was when it was in theaters, probably in 2007 at that point in time. So yeah, I'm familiar with it a little bit. What about you, Mike?
I used to love playing the games, off and on with friends of mine that owned them, because I was poor and didn't, or when they'd rent them or borrow them or whatever. So I was like super familiar with like the games and the mood. I actually saw this when it first came out, and I was very high, and it kind of scarred me a little bit. This was the peak of me going to see really violent horror movies stoned out of my mind in theaters, and it was also the end of it. That's all I have to say about that, bro.
Yeah, I could kind of see why.
Yeah.
I was aware of the video games. I've never played a Silent Hill video game. I don't think I've ever seen gameplay on a Silent Hill video game. I remember the covers of them. I probably saw like some sort of game commercial or trailer type thing for it.
Were you familiar with Pyramid Head? Because he's pretty iconic, like if you've seen anything about the games. No? Oh,
Not
okay.
at all. I mean,
okay.
Now that I'm older, like I've seen like stuff on YouTube and
yeah,
that kind of thing, but I wasn't familiar with Pyramid Head at all. I remember this movie coming out. I never saw it in the theater. I never rented it. It wasn't, I knew it was like a movie based off a video game that I didn't really care about. I was a Resident Evil kid, so I was just kind of like, I don't really care about Silent Hill. I always thought Silent Hill was just like the Big 8 version of Resident Evil.
Discount Resident Evil, yeah, but they're actually quite different.
Very
different.
different.
I understand the comparison though.
So I mean that's one of the main reasons I picked this was, I said when I picked it, I've been sitting on the, I bought the Scream Factory edition of this. They put it out a couple years ago. I remember all the hype about them putting it up, and people were really excited, and I saw that it was kind of having this like renaissance of like, people just really enjoying this movie. So I was like, I should pick it up, and I pick anything up at the Scream Factory anyway, and
yeah, shocker.
Yeah, so that was why I chose it, because I was like, I feel it's a bigger film that I never saw back in the day, so it's time to correct that. So we know where we're gonna start. First, we have to talk about what is our favorite scene and favorite kill in Silent Hill. I didn't even mean for that to rhyme.
Oh, man.
We'll start with you, Mike.
Why, thank you. Maybe this week my pick won't get stolen out from under me like it did the
I was
last 2 or 3
I was gonna
times.
throw it to you, not even joking. I was like, let's let Mike steal my scene.
Everyone always stepping on my toes. It's fine. I love it. I love to be stepped on. Let the record show.
Okay.
I have many so I'm not gonna say my favorite scene because I feel like somebody else will probably say that and it's like so fucking cliche, but like I will say my favorite kill, and it is obviously gonna be when Pyramid Head picks up Anna outside the church and literally just rips her skin off of her body like it's a wetsuit and throws it at the door, and then it like splatters all over Rhoda Mitchell's face like just as the door is closing, and it's like, oh man, that is how you do a fucking horror movie kill right there. You want to fucking terrify people? You just did it.
Yeah, that was gonna be my favorite.
It was like, and I mean, really up until that point, like you had seen the like kind of twisted remains of kills and stuff, but that was like the first like really big like, oh fuck, like okay, they mean business. Like there's stakes here. The flesh will be ripped from your body. and it will be flung at a church door.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was one of the few things that, like, from my stoned watching, there's like 3 or 4 like scenes and moments that really actually stuck through with me afterwards when I, was lucid and sober, and that is one of them. What about you, Colton?
Yeah, I mean, that's my favorite kill as well, but I guess I'll take the favorite scene, and maybe this is the cliche scene, I'm not really sure. But my favorite scene is when Rose has to memorize all the turns in the hospital because, and obviously, and what, succeeds that scene. But I mean, when she's memorizing all the different turns, I remember in the video games, like, their mapping system was so clunky where it'd be like actual like floor plans a lot of the time, and in the early games I don't think you could carry them around with you, so you would have to look at the map and then remember, like, okay, I take a left here, I take a right here, okay, this one's jammed, I'll go all the way down the hallway, which I was like, okay, that's a cute throwback to the video games.
It's like a little Easter egg.
Yeah, I like that. I was like, okay, that's cute. I remember that as a kid, like, my friend's parents having to do that. But obviously when she rounds the corner and sees all the nurses, that's like that's my favorite scene, where it's like, the light kind of like makes them all move / attracts them, so she has to go through in the dark, and then they start slashing each other, and it's just a really good scene. It's one of the few scenes in the movie where I kind of felt a little bit of like terror, other than just like visually, like the monsters being grotesque or whatever. It was like, I was like, oh, I kind of felt, a little bit of fear for Rose to like kind of get through the scene, and obviously the nurses,
actually like hold your breath, right?
Yeah, exactly. Like it made me anxious in a way, right? And the nurses, they're iconic from the game, so of course seeing them realized on screen, and actually a pretty like faithful rendition, and actually looking pretty good because it was like dimly lit.
Yeah.
That I was like, yeah, this is my favorite scene. I wrote it down right away. Favorite scene, that hallway nurse scene. What about you, Rowan?
That was my favorite scene, was the nurses.
Of course, yeah.
And now, of course, like, I have no basis. I knew once I watched the special features on the disc, like, they were from the games and all that kind of stuff. But just in the film, like, I was like, hey, this is just, like, iconic. Like, seeing this movie, I guess what I'm trying to say is, like, yeah, I was like, there's no way this isn't an iconic scene. Like, it's creepy. The makeup's really well done, like you said. The lighting's great in it. And it just really builds that tension. Any movie that does anything where, things are frozen and then they can move, like, I think this trick's usually used in horror movies with, like, mannequins and stuff.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking as well.
And that always, like, it always creeps me out, because then my anxiety's always like, oh, like, what one is it? Like, what one is, what mannequin, what non-moving thing is gonna move? And you're always like, oh, that's going to be the one that moves, and it's never the one you think it is, and it always gets you. And as for kill, I do love the skin-ripping scene. I really enjoyed kind of the big finale kill of ripping the cult leader in half with the chains.
Yeah.
I think just overall, like I said, with this being my first time, I didn't expect this film to be as violent or gory as it was. My memory was always just kind of, oh, this was like a PG horror movie or something in the theater.
Oh, no.
Meanwhile, me being completely scarred leaving it because I was like having a panic attack.
Yeah, it's like the games are like the polar opposite of that as well, where they're so like deathly serious and they deal with such like mature topics and themes that they're literally they're kind of too boring for children because we're too dumb to figure it out, but also it's like actually like terrifying and deals with like really heavy topics that it's a lot to take in regardless.
I will say, while watching this, I was harkening back to another episode, because I don't know about you guys, but it gave me Event Horizons feels, and all I kept thinking when I was watching this is, man, I wish this is what Event Horizons was like. Like, this was what Event Horizons was missing. Was like just all the hell scenes in this.
Yeah.
I don't know. I guess because of hell and, kind of the metal and chains and there's definitely, there was definitely a Event Horizons and Hellraiser, Clive Barker influence in the film.
For sure. sure, yeah.
Because I think with that hell look, it definitely was giving you kind of those like sadistic BDSM type vibes, Clive Barker vibes, like 100%.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, that like kind of torture.
Yeah, and like
pleasure,
especially like
yeah.
the scene with the janitor when like he comes alive and we transition into hell, like, and you know, he's crawling, like his hands behind his head, and
done
he's
up
like
with barbed wire and stuff. Yeah,
and he's like licking the air and stuff, and I'm just like, oh yeah, like. And now I mean, what, you know, watching some interviews with Christoph Gaines, you know, I know he said like Clive Barker was like one of the main influences, so it definitely, you know, made sense to me.
Yeah, as someone who was somewhat familiar with the game, sorry, it's kind of a lot of the creatures and whatnot where you were like, oh man, this is really cool. It's kind of like, yeah, I've seen that before. I've seen all of these things before. So when I was watching it, it was more so kind of like, oh, I think I like these a little bit better in the video game, or like, oh, they didn't look quite as out of place, you know, like all the little like crying children, you know, in that one scene, like I forget what they're called. They're like the Unborns or something like that, where they're all kind of like running after Rose and whatnot. I was kind of like, all right, the movie doesn't have like the budget to kind of execute on like what they're trying to do here with like 20 to 30 little CGI creations like chasing after her. That I remember the game very much like knew its limits back in the day, where like the whole purpose of why the town is wrapped in fog is purely because they didn't have the draw distance to render things, right? So
exactly,
it was kind of like their limitations made it a lot creepier. So when I was watching this movie and like I was seeing things recreated, it didn't always make 100% sense to me, and that's not even someone who's like completely familiar with the games. So some of those like monsters and stuff, I thought they were cool. Like I like the janitor as well, I like Pyramid Head, I like the nurses, but you know, the rest of it was kind of like, okay, yeah, this is what you would have to do as a Silent Hill movie. And
yeah, I mean, it kind of becomes like spot the reference, right?
Yeah,
like,
it's like references, spot the iconic monsters, you know, that sort of thing, right? From the first couple of games specifically. That is just like, yeah, we take, you know, I can't remember which one Pyramid appears in. Let's say in number 2 he's in. We'll take him because because he's iconic. And it's like, all right, the nurses I know are in 2 as well, so let's take them. And you know, it's just like, it's kind of like cherry picking a bunch. And to me, where once again, I'm no expert of the Silent Hill games, but I know their stories at least a little bit. Whereas like the story to this in this movie to me is like dog shit. It's like I thought it was terrible. I could barely even repeat like what actually happens in this movie. It's kind of just an excuse to show cool shit every 20 minutes or so.
I was gonna say with the story, like to me it seemed like a lot of kind of interference with what the original idea for the movie was. So I reluctantly watched like a 40-minute interview with Christoph Gaines, all in French, which was not exciting. You know,
bilingual king.
respect to him, but he's just he's very artsy but he's not very emotive. So it was a long interview, but he basically talked about he was a big fan of the games, which I think you can tell this is definitely a movie, whether it's executed properly or not. Like I could always tell it was like coming from a place of love for the material.
It wasn't like one of those where it's like, director for hire, the studio's just like, oh, we want to bang out this, you know, video game adaptation, let's just get somebody. And
but also like a misunderstanding of the material in a way, because I think with the games usually like Silent Hill is almost like a way to kind of like torture the protagonist, like it's almost like their sins exemplified, where it's like, what are Rose's sins in the movie that she should be like in Silent Hill / being tortured about?
No,
right?
For sure. Like they take the existentialism and sort of, because that's what it is. It's the games are very like existential.
Yeah,
it's like a purgatory that you keep descending into hell almost in it.
Yeah,
like,
purgatory, limbo.
Yeah,
but they just take that and kind of like strip it of its like angst, I guess.
Yeah,
and depth, and sort of make it more of a aesthetic thing.
It's very surface level.
Yeah, rather than a like really kind of, like you said, almost boring, like more philosophical investigation.
But yeah, I cut you off, Rowan. Sorry. Go
No,
ahead.
I was going to say, like I said, like it seemed like there was a lot of interference. So I guess like semi-short story time with Rowan. So basically from what I learned of it, the background was, he played the games. He was a big fan. The company that put the games out had kind of like put this up for sale and said like, we want a big company to, come buy the rights. He wasn't a big company. He's kind of known as just like this genre French director. So what he did was he actually shot scenes with his own money and weaved them into a video essay and sent them to the company about like how important these games were to him and how he wanted to direct this film. And they actually awarded him, not a company, the rights to the film.
I love that. Yeah, that's awesome.
But so his big thing was once he got them, he approached them and said, I don't want to do anything about the first Silent Hill game. He said, my favorite game is the second game. I like the second and third game.
Tell, yeah.
And he was like, I want to do it based off the second and third one, where then they interfered and the gaming company was like, no, it has to have something to do with the first one, because they, of course, they're saying we want this to be like a franchise of films. So I know he talked about that the story got really complicated because, the bare bones of this story in the film, I know, I've watched some comparison videos, is somewhat bare bones of the first game of, like a missing child and a parent looking for their missing child. And he just kind of talked about like he was basically forced to do that if he wanted to keep the rights to it. They were just like, these are things that we won't move on. I did think kind of interesting thing was apparently he fought really hard. He didn't originally want to do it as an English movie. He wanted to make it like a French new wave genre film because he was like, I could do a lot, like be a lot more violent. I could like do a lot more stuff. Now, of course, the powers that be are like, nah, you got to target America.
Yeah.
Which I think works out because even with the, the research I did on the games, like, the games are set in America. Like it's a very like middle America game. So I think it might be difficult to place it elsewhere in my mind.
Yeah, it's produced by a Japanese company though. So it's almost like,
I was going to say it's weird. It's this like Japanese, American, like French like
it's kind of like it makes the games a little bit like wholesome in a way, similar to like the Resident Evil games in terms of like misunderstanding like aspects of American culture, or kind of seeing them through what another culture's view of American culture is, right? So there's interesting aspects where almost like him doing this movie, setting it in America, you're kind of doing that again as a French director as well. I don't know, that's kind of interesting to me.
And I know I found it really hard, like, especially with the lens of, 2022. Man, I found it really hard not to compare it to Resident Evil films. Like, the whole time I'm watching it, I'm like, how does this compare to Resident Evil? And then I'm like, why am I thinking of, why does this compare, like...
It's so weird, because I think the movie's, like, nothing like Resident Evil. Like, don't get me wrong, I'm not a huge fan of this movie, but most of those Resident Evil movies are, like, utter trash. I'm sorry, And
I will say, listen, I love them. I love Mila so much, and I love the Resident Evil games. Obviously, I've been a devotee my entire life.
Yeah, the games is a different
I took the weekend off work when the last one came out, but they are garbage, and they do not resemble the games in the least. They're just essentially, God love it. It's just vehicles for Mila to stylishly beat shit up. Yeah. And that's fine. But like, this is actually like an attempt to, trying to capture an essence of the video game, whereas Resident Evil doesn't even, they're just like, we're going to throw the characters in, but like it has nothing to do with anything. Umbrella Corp, there we go. We did our job.
So when you were comparing it to Resident Evil, Rowan, was it just like, in terms like you thought this movie was like better than Resident Evil, where there's certain like thematic or stylistic things that kept bringing it up? Or is it just the early video game movie comparison.
I feel like it was kind of just the early like horror genre video game.
Mm-hmm.
And I think Silent Hill as a video game franchise is always kind of held up with Resident Evil in terms of like those were like kind of those two
survival
horror flagship PlayStation games.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I definitely, when comparing the two, like this is definitely more my style, I think, than like the original Resident Evil original Resident Evil movie.
Yeah.
Like this would definitely be more in my wheelhouse than that one per se. Not to say I don't like that original Resident Evil movie. I mean, one thing that's always going to win it for me, which, I had to look into while I was watching it, was the score.
Yeah.
It's like really good. It's really good.
Isn't it just a bunch of the video game music again?
Yeah, so
I was gonna say it's like a Frankenstein's monster of
it's like I don't know. I recognized iconic moments for sure from the
when I
video
looked
game
it up. When I looked it up,
Yeah.
it said there's only one piece of music in it. I don't know what it was, just some random part that they made for the movie, and everything else are directly taken from the games.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
To me, is ingenious for that fan service of, the fans of Silent Hill. But even for someone like me that's never played the games, like now, I mean, just for the music, I want to go play the games now. Because I was like, the whole time, I felt like Mike. I'm just sitting there saying to myself, like, this is a mood. This is just a 100% a mood.
They are a mood for sure.
I was going to say, like, creating a mood, because it's kind of funny, because Exilia was on the couch with me when I was watching. She wasn't really watching it. She was, like, in and out sleeping. And when it was done, I said to her, I was like, the music is awesome in this. And she kept saying, she's like, well, like, if you go on YouTube, like, there's, like, 6-hour compilations of just this music for, like, study music and chill music. She's like, have like millions of hits. Like this is like a huge soundtrack on the internet. And I was just like I said, I did not know anything about anything to do with this.
Well, see, now a whole new world has opened up to you.
I know, right?
Yeah, it's so interesting seeing the movie through your eyes, because it's literally like, for me, it's like, once again, not a huge fan. I don't know everything about it, but it's like I recognize the music. I recognize the characters, or not the characters, sorry, the monsters. I kind of know the story well enough to basically be like, why didn't they do this? So for me, it's like the entire movie winds up being too confusing. And even though the director might be a fan of the material, it's like, man, like some of the acting, like the kid acting is like absolutely terrible in the movie. It is so bad. And then the enunciation of a lot of the dialogue in the movie, like it almost sounds like Google Translate or like Google Read. It's like, why are we going to Silent Hill? Like, it's just like weirdly spoken sometimes, that I was just like, my very first note is the kid acting is terrible and a lot of the dialogue is over enunciated, which is just like, I found like it was almost like the some of the actors didn't like know their lines in a way. It was like, it was so annoying listening to it at times.
I mean, it could be they're wasted too. I know one of the trivia facts I had read about it was the woman that played Rose. What's her last name?
Rhoda Mitchell.
Rhoda Mitchell. So
how dare you, fucking late 90s lesbian icon. Anyway, go ahead.
Well, I was just gonna say, apparently in interviews, Christoph Gaines was not a fan. He chose her, apparently, like that was who he wanted for the role. But her method of acting is that she has to do shots before she shoots anything. So she basically...
Wait, like shots of alcohol?
Like alcohol. Like she...
Oh, okay. I'm like, are we talking like, is she gets her photos taken? Like, what's going on?
No, like apparently she just has to do like multiple alcoholic shots. And apparently he like really wasn't a fan of this. And he just...
Not Ro calling out Rhoda Mitchell and calling her an alcoholic.
So, I mean, maybe that's why the dialogue was so weird. I don't know.
Well, in a way, that kind of makes sense, because if you're really concentrating on the words to say them like clearly, that's what it wound up being. And I only noticed it a lot in the beginning, and then I kind of just like you know, at a certain point of just like, whatever, this is the movie. But I noticed it for sure within the first like 10 to 15 minutes of the movie, which is obviously a lot more of like Rose and her kid, right?
Yeah.
Like I remember specifically like whatever the line delivery, it's something along the lines of, "What do you mean, Silent Hill?" It's like, it's very enunciated. It sounds so like robotic. It's almost like an alien doing their best impression of a person or something. Like it's bizarre. And now like learning that he's like a French director and stuff as well, and wanted to film it in French and whatnot, I'm kind of like, okay, was he actually concerned with the performances very much at all, or was it just kind of like he wanted the vibe to be right, or he wanted to like pay homage to the video games? You know what I mean? Like it's yeah. Now I'm kind of like wondering a little bit more about it. But what do you guys think about Sean Bean in the movie?
Okay,
the only movie Sean Bean
so
doesn't
many notes
die?
about this.
100%.
First of all, I was gonna say this was one of the weird anomalies, because this I feel like, I'm trying to like place it temporally, but I feel like it was during the heyday of Sean Bean dying in every single movie he was ever in, or TV show.
Yeah.
So I remember when I started rewatching it now, again, the first time I saw it, I was fucked up. So I vaguely remembered him dying in this, and I was like, oh yay, I can't wait to see Sean Bean die again. And then I was like, wait, hang on a minute, he's not dead. What the fuck?
Yeah, I was a little surprised he didn't die. I mean, I expect all Sean Bean characters to die. Not that it was a good performance, but, you know, I've said on previous episodes, you know, me and Exilia, giant Sons of Anarchy fan, so Kim Coates, I was like pumped.
Oh, yeah, Kim Coates. We love Kim Coates.
Yeah, I love Kim Coates. I was gonna say it didn't need to be in the movie.
100%. That's what I'm trying to get at.
I have 80 notes. If you cut that the fuck out, it would have like raised the movie 20 points in my book, because it was completely useless. I'm like, get rid of all these men. Why are they here?
And this is where I think the studio interference comes in.
It was so like, but the main part of it was like, I'm sorry, like so female centric, and it works so well.
So the original script for this had 0 male actors in it. There was no male roles in the original script.
Period.
So Christoph Gaines did say that the studio interfered and said they wouldn't put the movie out unless there was also a male protagonist that they could market. So like Kim Coates,
with Sean Bean
Sean Bean, Kim Coates characters were all created afterwards on rewrites to like intertwine this other story that the studio wanted. Like he said, it was like executives in the studio that just basically said they weren't interested in marketing an all-female like horror movie, which, you know, yeah, it just didn't need to be there. Like, I know he said that, you know, Detective Gucci is like, it's an Easter egg because in a scrap piece of paper in one of the games, it mentions a police officer named Gucci, and like that's it though. Like it's not a character in the game other than on a piece of paper. So he just kind of put it as this Easter egg, and then just, you know, wrote this fucking shitty storyline.
Well, and that's what I'm trying to get at. We spend 20 minutes of this movie probably with Sean Bean and Kim Coates wandering around, looking for people, looking for Silent Hill, and it's the most boring shit ever. That I was just literally like, I got written down, every single time we go back to Sean Bean, it's boring as fuck, which is literally like how I felt about it. I was just always like, why is this here? Why? So the entire movie, whenever we cut away from Silent Hill, it's just worse. So like,
it totally like messes with the momentum.
Yes, 100%.
You know, and frankly, it pads the runtime. This movie didn't need to be 2 hours long. An hour and 40 minutes would have been sweet spot.
100%. Yep.
Sweet
I
spot,
completely agree. I mean, the story would still have to make sense, but I believe you cut out all that 20 minutes. It's probably a stronger
but I mean
movie.
that still that contributes to the nonsensicalness of the story. Let's face it.
Yeah.
I think like a big issue too with Sean Bean in it in general too is, I know, seeing some of the cast interviews, like even some of like the, you know, heavyweight actress in this movie all played the video game. They all talked about, like, read the script, scared the shit out of me, like, I'm gonna do this video game movie, I'm gonna go play the video game. Or Christoph was like, you need to play the video game. He had a conversation with Sean Bean, and Sean Bean came out in all the press and said, yeah, they asked me to play the video game. I don't play video games. I don't like video games. I wasn't interested at all in the source material. It seemed like it was just a paycheck movie to him.
Yeah.
I mean, to be fair,
what
he doesn't interact.
Was he doing?
He doesn't interact with any of the source material anyways. He's in a completely different movie. He's in just like a thriller where his wife and kid are missing, right? It's a completely different movie what he's in. That's what I'm saying. Every single time we jump back to it, I was just like, this is so unnecessary.
Yeah, he just gets to wander through this, like, daylight world, doing nothing. And I mean, I get that, like, retroactively, I guess, it kind of creates that extra layer of, like, ooh, there's these, like, layers of reality or whatever. And, you know, like, you can be in the same place at the same time experiencing two different things, and it's like kind of different dimensions or whatever, but like that just isn't strong enough to like justify having that plot in the movie at all. Again, cut it out and you literally don't lose anything from the movie, you actually gain something.
Well, that's what I was just about to say. Yeah, you cut it out, and then the reveal at the end of the movie that like they left Silent Hill, but they're just in a different plane of existence. They're actually not out of it. It's a better reveal without already knowing.
It's more of a smack in the face.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's a better reveal.
It's more of a
like,
twist.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, exactly.
Because the whole movie, you see them cutting through, and you're like, clearly it's this like multi-level thing, right? But like, yeah, you cut that out. Exactly. That's true. I never thought about that. I just thought about cutting it all out altogether and how it would have made it stronger. But like, yeah, the punch at the end would have been like so much more powerful.
Yeah. What about the backstory of the town, like being like a mining village and stuff? I kind of like that in a way, like where it all like burned to the ground. It kind of gave like an explanation for like the hell vibe whenever they'd go to the different world.
Yeah. And the really cool moment they had where right before the like darkness starts, when they're carrying around
a canary
and a fucking I remember like hooting and hollering in the theater. That's the only thing I remember losing my shit. And I'm like, yes, that fucking canary knows shit's going down.
That was gonna be the art for the episode, just the canary like in a cage, but I couldn't find like a good picture of it, so I was like, well, I'll have to use something else. But I was like, man, that I didn't remember that. I was like, that's pretty iconic. I like that. And you also see, I think one of the miners is kind of like hung up on the bar or up on the fence, like when she first goes down there, and I was like, oh, that's weird. But like, yeah, I liked how it just kept coming back and was kind of all merged together. I was like, see, that's the cool backstory of the mining town. I did like that aspect of the movie for sure.
They didn't pull at that thread enough. They should have pulled more at that thread and not with other ones. Yeah.
I'm kind of interested to get your guys' opinion on what Mike said about the different layers of reality and kind of, you know, the ending, what we think the ending is. Because I did think it was interesting when, like I said, when I was watching all these interviews and like, to me, when I was watching like the bonus feature disc, it wasn't even necessarily the get facts about the movie. It was like I said, I didn't know anything about Silent Hill. And I was like, I need to find out about the game and like everything. And I thought it was kind of interesting that, like Christoph Gaines said he didn't approach this as a horror movie. He approached it as a science fiction movie. So was actually repeated by a lot of the actors in it, you know, just saying like, oh, it's horror, but it's also like science fiction-y, because they really viewed it like, even though it's like the you know, hell, like this hellish, you know, reality, they viewed it as like, you know, this isn't hell and life and death and heaven, like these are actually just like realities. These are like multiple realities going on at once. I was kind of interested in just your guys' opinions on that, because I know, like, when it ended, what I assumed, I guess, happened, or the meaning of it, but then as I kind of poked around, I was like, oh, there's actually, like, people that have totally different explanations on what happened to these characters, like, why they're here, why they're still here, all that kind of stuff.
So I think the whole marketing the movie as a science fiction movie is really stupid. And the reason why I think it's dumb is just...
I knew you were going to say that.
It's just so dumb because, I mean, saying something science fiction conjures a very specific image to mind. It's like, it's not even like nowadays where it's like, oh, an A24 science fiction movie is going to be like barely any sci-fi aspects, and it's going to be like a character-driven thing, right? You're going to have one little small sci-fi tweak to it. It's just like, it almost feels like they didn't know how to explain multiple levels of reality. Because, like, that's the whole thing. Like, I don't think the Silent Hill games most of the time describe it as hell. They always have a different word for it. And it's just basically, like, reality and then unreality. But, like, the whole thing kind of exists, like, outside of time. Like that's what I said. It's almost like a purgatory and a hell sort of dynamic. But it's still, like, the purgatory still exists outside of our world. So kind of like how I just view the end of the movie is just literally, they just kind of escape their purgatory or escape the town, but they're still into another one. It's like, they're not stuck in the town anymore, but they're existing outside of a plane of reality that's different than our own. Is kind of
exactly
what I saw it.
Well, I mean, all of my notes were like, this is literally purgatory limbo, right? Like, it's the
100%,
same echo from the video games,
and that's kind of what I had viewed it as. Like, so I had kind of assumed that when they're driving in the Silent Hill and she sees, you know, like the evil version of Sharon, you know, running across the street, and the car, like, you know, starts turning and going
freaking out. Yeah.
So, like, my assumption was by the end of it, I'm like, okay, like, I assumed they died. Like, they got in a car accident. I assumed the cop also did, and then they died, and then this
because it shows all their wrecked vehicles, right?
Well, you know, like, I thought, like, to me, I read it with the hints, like, when the cop's arresting her, and then she just kind of, like, starts bleeding from her head, and they mention it, but then they don't really address it, and she's just like, oh, that's weird, like...
I think that's an early, like, trope to try and basically do the, like, crazy protagonist thing of, like, oh, this could all be in her head because she bumped her head. It's kind of like, I bet they were trying to seed that early on in the movie, just kind of like explain away some of the craziness, you know, in the beginning of the movie.
So, I mean, that's just how I saw it. So I was like, oh, at the end, I was like, okay, they're dead, and they're just still in this purgatory, and they get to go to hell all the time.
Yeah, I guess I never pictured or never put together like, oh yeah, they had like 2 car crashes to get the people there. It's kind of like, I don't know, it's almost like that aspect of the movie isn't even interesting to me. It's kind of like, why are they here is the interesting aspect to me. And I don't know, I still don't think there's like a good reason why Rose is here, or why, you know, it's Alessa, but why Sharon is here, you know, other than for like to fulfill like a fanatical cult's like purposes.
Well, they they do that like split off of her having like, it's like the good in her, and then they're sending it out in the world so she can come back, you know what I mean? It's literally just like a mechanic to get her there, like you said. Like, why is she there?
Wouldn't it just been like way more interesting if like the mom was like a despondent mother, or like a mother that was like kind of abusive or an alcoholic or whatever, and she kind of like lost her child through like negligence or something, and she was atoning for something for the movie? Like, I just don't understand like why
and that's why she was hell-bent on like, you know, chasing after the girl and
it's like
because she had this guilt. And
you're just missing like a key feature of like why someone would be in purgatory or hell. I just don't, like, I never saw enough from the movie to believe that Rose deserves to be tortured, or like she's not even interesting enough for me to follow to kind of see like, oh, how is she gonna get out of this? Like the entire movie I was just kind of like, what is going on? Like, these are cool effects,
and everybody
but, like,
else has done something, like, you know, they're either in the cult and they're like complicit, and like even I can't remember the character's name, Dahlia, Deborah Kara Unger, you know, the mother of Alessa, like, you know, they give her that really cool story where, you know, she immediately regrets it, but, you know, she is complicit in that act as well. And everybody kind of has their reasons for being drawn into that.
Is Rose being tortured because she decided to leave her husband? You know, like, it's like, okay, that's not a good enough reason to be tortured. I don't know. That was kind of the thing. It's just like, I was missing like an emotional core, or like a reason to care. Like, I wanted a more
and like some kind of like edge to her character. It was just, there was 100%. No rough edge, there was no hook, there was no
she's just kind of boring, which is just like
boring. Well, I mean, it's like white blonde lady with, you know, no
like
personality.
Like for example, I think Silent Hill 2, I'm not 100% sure, but I think it's about you're a man looking for his wife, And what the final twist of the game winds up being is that he killed his wife and she was in his trunk all along when he went to Silent Hill. So you go on this huge, long campaign looking for your wife, and you're discovering all these different motives and different explanations to where she went, and then it's just revealed that she was in your trunk all along, right? It's just like a crazy character that obviously he should atone for what he did. Right, so it's just like I wanted something like that in this movie. I wanted some crazy twist other than just basically being like, oh, the kid is half of an ancient evil or a vengeful spirit or something. I wanted a reason. And I never. Really
and she just had the misfortune of adopting this girl.
Yeah, which obviously you got to kind of buy into the whole cult. Everything is divined, obviously,
and
it's fate, right?
And to go with your point, and I mean, this would have been ripe. I feel like if they made the movie nowadays. Especially the last couple of years with so we all know I don't like cops, but one of my favorite characters in it is Laurie Holden's Sybil Bennett, because it's a great character. She's a really good actress. She's charismatic. She really carries every scene she's in. Honestly, you can't take your eyes off of her. She just has presence, and that's the way it is. And I kind of thought it would have been cool similarly if, because obviously when you're a cop, there's all sorts of shit that could be torturing you.
Oh,
things
100%.
You've done, things
PTSD,
you didn't do, you know what I mean?
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, things you've seen, like I said, things that she was forced to do, things that she did and regrets or whatever, and, it's eating at her, and there's just all these, delicious threads that, they just left there and didn't really follow up on, and instead devoted 20 minutes to Sean Bean.
That's what I was just about to say. Imagine if we forgot about Sean Bean and actually fleshed out these characters or let them be tortured a little bit. It's just, I don't know, man. You know what's funny? You
Because she just looks like an asshole in a way, because she just comes up and goes oh, this little girl, is she yours? You know what I mean?
I was so confused about, but I literally have, why is the cop so suspicious? She peers at him from across
other than the fact that
lot.
she has to follow them into the
and then she just follows
town,
them.
right?
Yeah, and I'm like, why? Yeah. What do they do,
Whereas if they'd given her some kind of juicy, dark backstory,
yes,
that would have totally explained why she was drawn to that and ended up there,
I just wanted more. I think I wanted more almost the entire time, other than the creature designs and the music, which once again I don't even credit to the movie because that's the video game. So it's kind of what did the movie do to make me want to see this as a movie? It was just I wanted more. In Rowan, you mentioned Event Horizon, and that was kind of my issue with Event Horizon as well. Where it had such a great idea, but a shitty story that never capitalized on the premise. And that is literally, it's funny, but I think that's my review for this movie too. It has great kernels of an idea that I don't know if they execute on the premise for me.
You keep waiting for that moment where it explodes and becomes what you are expecting it to be.
Yeah.
And it's like you're talking about kernels. It's literally the kind of kernel with a little tiny bit of popcorn coming out of it at the bottom of the bag that you almost break your tooth on.
Yeah.
And it's oh, okay, I guess I'm done. I guess the bag is done. This is it.
I guess we're gonna get a 5 to 10 minute flashback scene to explain everything and set up Alessa as this evil character. And I'm okay, sure. I guess there has to be a reason for this movie to end in a way, but it's just
which, by the way, is just shoehorned in. All of a sudden, it's oh, I'm gonna tell you exactly what happens right now. I'm gonna show it to you too. I'm not gonna explain. I'm just gonna show it to you.
Yeah, I said that must
for
be
no reason. I'm gonna show this to you for no reason.
I have written down that must be one of the most gratuitous exposition dumps in movie history. It just comes out of nowhere and it goes on for 10 minutes. And I'm okay, it is interesting
they want the Alessa, and they want they get another reference which I appreciated was the nurse. The Lisa, the nurse.
Yeah, I like that with the bleeding eyes. Yeah, it's great.
Yeah, it was really cool that they showed that. I wish that that was again another little thing that they had. You can't take everything from the games and make it into a huge thing. I understand that.
Yeah.
I like that they were oh, we're gonna have this kind of nice scene that everyone's gonna recognize from the games. But again, it was just sort of oh god, we gotta fucking shovel that in there right now, and just like I said, an exposition dump. It was just
I don't know. It's just for me, it's it's a cool backstory. Would have been cooler if it was set up throughout the 2 hour and 5 minute movie instead of set up in the last 15 minutes. I don't know. It's has so many good ideas. I wish it was done better. Spread out, I guess. I don't know. Anyways, Rowan, we've been talking so much. What do you got to say?
I was gonna say, really one of my last points on it was that to me was a positive is I was surprised at how much of it was practical effect.
Yes. I will give you that.
I mean, I was expecting to come in and to me, you know, I said earlier, like, my brain automatically went to the comparison of this and Resident Evil, the movie. And I was like, this is kind of what Resident Evil, the movie needed, was like, way more practical effects.
Sorry, just what effects are we talking about? Because I actually never noticed. Like, obviously, I know the janitor is like, obviously that's makeup, but you know.
like the janitor's practical, the nurses are practical, Pyramid Head is practical.
Okay,
like most
all the iconic stuff, I guess.
Yeah, because I was like, there's so many CGI bugs in this one part that is like absolutely terrible.
I found there was like a nice balance though between there was a lot of CGI, but there was a lot of like stuff that they could have CGI'd and didn't.
Okay.
I guess.
Well, and to me, like, I guess I was willing to, you know, be nicer to it because I got it. I'm like, all right, we're in 2006. You know, there's only so much practical stuff you can do when you have to like melt the real world into a hellscape. So, you know, I was kind of like looking past that. I was like, oh, you know, in 2006. I'm sure people in the theater were like, oh yeah, this looks pretty good. Like,
yeah, I do think the production design of when it shifts from, you know, that to the hellscape is pretty cool. Like when they recreate like the bathroom and stuff like that. I do like that. You know, it looks really good. And
I guess like, you know, and then getting to see some of the behind the scenes footage of like things that didn't have to be practical, like so like them stuck in like the boiler fan room and like the giant sword coming in, like that was all practical. And like so it was cool. And you know, even the you know, like you said, the really bad looking CG cockroaches, they're actually was like real ones they made, like mixed in with CG ones, which I mean you have to have because like they crush one and you know that kind of thing.
Yeah, I wonder if like a little bit more restraint there would have went, like maybe if we made a dozen real ones instead of like trying to have like 50 or 60 of them, right? It was just, to me, I was just like, oh my god, this looks so bad, other than the one that they crush, I guess. But
I mean, I think overall in terms of special effects and even just the movie in general, like I think the iconic stuff is the iconic monsters.
Yeah.
And I think it was kind of a brilliant choice for, so, like all the monsters are done by dancers and, you know,
yeah, I remember reading that when I first went to see it, and I thought that was really cool because the only way to convey any kind of like creepiness is through movement, other than whatever makeup you have on.
Yeah, and most
and
of
that's
these monsters...
very, and like you said, it's that kind of stop, like Colton was saying, that sort of like stop motion sort of like vibe. I feel like you can only do that if it's people that are like real people that are really in control of like their bodies.
Well, yeah, it's like synchronized dance moves almost in a way, right? Which it sounds silly to say, but obviously if they're all in that amount of makeup and doing that nurse scene, it is basically like a routine to them, right? That they have to execute on.
Yeah, and the nurse scene, like I know when I was looking at the behind the scenes stuff, the nurse scene was like actually pretty interesting where they're all dancers, it's choreographed, but then they were saying how they got the effect where it was like this thing where like they shot it, then they play it backwards, but then it's like weird. They play it backwards, but then somehow also play it forward while playing it backwards. So
that's the effect in the video game that they go for. It's very like erratic movements, right?
Yeah,
like it's really hard to replicate. Which I understand why you'd kind of mess with it, right?
And I should have wrote his name down. I can't remember. He was Italian, but shout out the guy that played Pyramid Head, who's the guy that choreographed the entire film.
No way.
Wow.
Because that to me, the Pyramid Head is, and to I think a lot of people who watch this movie and a lot of people who play the games, obviously, it's one of the images that you think of and the people who don't play the games might actually recognize because it's been replicated like in popular culture. But like, holy fuck, I remember seeing that, and I was waiting for Pyramid Head. I was like, this is what I want to see.
Mm-hmm.
And it was stunning. That like the first scene with him, I was gonna say it was my favorite scene because honestly it is. I just thought everybody else was gonna say it, but it's like fuck. I literally my breath caught in my throat. It was literally breathtaking.
He did fantastic. So he played Pyramid Head and the janitor. So he did both of those. But like he was talking about the pyramid head thing, and I was like, man, like I could never do it. So he was so tall because he wore 15-inch heels in order to, get the height, because they wanted him at 7 feet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he was saying that so like the pyramid on his head had no vision. He could only see down. And he said it was like 12 pounds on his head. And I was just like, yeah, like in his movements, like just everything. Like, man, what a job, bringing that character to life.
It's funny, too, because you guys were talking about like how iconic Pyramid Head is. Do you guys know that the creator of Pyramid Head hates him now? Did you guys ever see that like famous tweet? Where I think he tweeted out like, I regret ever making Pyramid Head, or I fucking hate Pyramid Head, or something. It's kind of like he made one iconic thing and that's like what everyone points to. And he's like, I have this like vast body of work that in my opinion is much better than, Pyramid Head. But all anyone ever focuses on is this guy with a triangle on his head, right? Like it's so funny. Like the creator hates him.
It's funny though, because like I totally get that, but also it's like, girl, this is your hook. You need a hook to get people into your body of work. You don't have that, nobody's gonna give a fuck.
That's true.
You're lucky to have that hook so that interested people will go, I'm gonna delve further.
I guess the guy's
Like,
probably the guy's probably wealthy enough that it's like he's probably gone back to like that artist thing where it's like, I care about the art, I don't care about the money anymore, I'm filthy rich.
Now that I have money, I don't care about it.
Exactly. Yeah.
Exactly. Let's face it, that's the problem with a lot of things right now. You get the money and then you stop caring about the money.
I hope we can get to that level. I'd like to just care about the art.
Just phone in the podcast every couple of weeks. Wait, so we're not phoning it in right now?
So are you guys comfortable to go in the rating this?
Yeah, let's do it.
Sure.
So if you're new to the podcast, our rating system is nay, okay, yay, or slay. We will start with you, Colton. What do you think of 2006's Silent Hill?
Yeah, as everyone's probably heard, I seem to be a little bit more negative on the movie as a whole than probably you guys. It's just for me, it's like a lot of the aspects of the movie to me are kind of like obvious things you would do if adapting Silent Hill. So the fact that they couldn't think of like a good enough narrative to kind of wrap this all up in and put a bow on it leaves me like pretty disappointed. I was pretty bored by the Sean Bean scenes. I was pretty confused about like why we were doing a lot of this. I do think the creature effects are really good. I still like obviously the music and the premise of shifting back between the two worlds, but yeah, it's an okay for me. If it had a strong narrative, because like I'm like a writing and narrative guy, that's what I care most about. I could probably bump it higher, but yeah, for as it stands, not going what it could have been, it's an okay for me. Yeah, I guess I'll throw it. What do you think, Mike?
I will agree with you in many respects. And I honestly, okay, I'm going to start off and say I'm giving it an okay. And here's why. So when I first saw it, I remember, again, didn't remember a lot of it, and I thought that my confusion in the years following seeing it was because I was high, which definitely contributed to it, but it was also, it turns out that it didn't make a whole lot of sense to begin with.
Yeah.
So I feel like even if I had gone into it completely sober on my first watch, I probably would have been like, still a little bit confused here. Don't remember things. But in my mind, it was like, oh yeah, like a total slay. Because I remember like loving it and being disturbed by it. And there are lots of disturbing things that happen in it, which is to its credit because it is a horror movie. But I think it was mostly that when I watched it, the set pieces that were clearly love letters to moments in the games just stuck in my mind so much and were so well done that like I wanted to love the movie as a whole. And also, I need to throw this up because I did not mention this at any point during the podcast. So the director and the writer are responsible for two of my favorite movies ever.
Oh my god, what are they?
Christoph Gans did Brotherhood of the Wolf, which is one of my like it's like a cornerstone in my like early life.
I recognize the cover from video stores. I've never seen it.
Yeah, it's one of those movies that like it's a real cult following.
Okay.
I think it was really big in like the French cinema world at the time, but like because you could tell it was definitely like kind of a budget movie. And it had like people in it who are in a lot of things, like Monica Bellucci and all these other people, like, you know, who are huge stars. And then Roger Avary, I mean, of course, we all know he co-wrote Pulp Fiction, but he also directed one of my favorite movies ever, The Rules of Attraction, which was unfortunately a Bret Easton Ellis adaptation, who was, when I was a teenager, one of my favorite authors, and now I think he's a giant piece of shit, so let's just throw that out there. But yeah, I love the two of them. I love those two movies so much that, like, knowing that they collaborated on this adaptation of a video game series I liked, it sort of, like, colored my perception of it and my memories for many years. But I definitely feel like watching it from a more, like, adult perspective and while sober, and I was like, I get that this is actually not a great movie as such, but it does have the mood and the atmosphere and that, like, kind of dread and some really crazy, like, terrifying, violent scenes, but it's not pushed far enough, and there's too much shit in it, like you said, that doesn't matter. And the narrative of the games, from what I remember, is so much more existential, and even though the lore gets convoluted, it still makes a lot more sense, whereas this, they were just clearly Frankensteining plot elements from like 4 or 5 different games, but then taking those plot elements and adapting them because they didn't want to just do straight up rehashes of the games.
Yeah.
They wanted to do their own thing, clearly, and I totally get that, because adaptation is adaptation, not translation, which is also not translation. But anyway, you know, and I get that, but I think in the mix, a lot of stuff got lost that makes it just, I don't know when I'm going to watch it again, to be honest. Like, that's the way I look at it. I look at it and go, I'm just probably going to play the games instead of watching the movie again.
That's how I feel too.
So that's why I give it an okay. If I just wanted to focus on, like, the set pieces, the Pyramid Head attacks and the nurses and the opening, you know, when she crashes the car and, like, the town is foggy and you see the thing, like, that's all great, but, like, that does not a movie make. When it's 2 hours, if it was 90 minutes or 80 minutes, I would totally be way more forgiving of it. But this is a 2-hour goddamn movie, and there's just too much shit that drags it down. That's what I will say. Rowan, what is your say on it?
So I did probably one of the things that I know for sure Mike and Exilia would be super proud of me. I didn't do what I, normally do, which is come into a movie with unrealistically high expectations. This might be
Congratulations.
This might be the first film I really didn't expect anything. I was like, this is going to be terrible. I'm going to regret picking this. And like I said, like I had a blast with it. Unfortunately I did, I watched this. I did the typical, watch this during the day and didn't watch it at night. But I still had an awesome time with it. Like I said, I loved the monsters. I loved a lot of the practical effects. I love the music. But then, like we pointed out, the whole Sean Bean plot was just not needed. I didn't love that part.
Get rid of the man.
Pretty much, get rid of the man. Like, a lot of the story, I think they tried to almost overcomplicate the story more so than it needed to be. It could have been a lot simpler. And I did feel, I don't know if it was actually there, but I felt like Christoph Gans kind of being held hostage a bit, where I'm sure there was the thought, like, this is going in American theaters, we need this to do what it needs to do, and I kind of wish I could get that French version of this film where we go super gory and we go, super, far more explicit in it, which I think could really work in this, because like I said, it has, like, this Hellraiser feel that I think you could get a lot grimier with. But all in all,
the passion was there, right?
Oh yeah, the passion was definitely there. So I mean, I'm gonna give it a yay, because like I really enjoyed it. I'll probably watch it again a couple times, and maybe because I don't have that, taint of having played the game, so it's not, I know a lot of people love those games, so if I had to play the games first, I probably would have been like everyone else and been like, like, this isn't really it. Yeah, like, I don't have that, so I had a lot of fun with it. I'll give it a yay. I'll watch it again.
Yeah, to be fair, most video game movies are absolute garbage.
Yes.
Like, unwatchable.
That was actually one of my notes. I was like, as adaptations go, this is probably as good as you can get.
It's definitely among the better video game adaptations for sure.
Yeah.
So I think, 2 okays and a yay, that sounds pretty fair to me for Silent Hill. So we told you what we think. Next up, we asked you what you think. And, a couple of you responded on Instagram. We threw out the question there. So to think of it responded and said, decent but slow. I actually had more fun with the sequel. So I haven't seen the sequel.
Yeah, I can't remember it, but yeah, maybe the sequel will be a little bit even more your speed, Rowan.
Yeah, maybe. I'll have to check it out. Friend of the podcast, author Brad Dunn wrote, he said, poor script, great visuals.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Stunning visuals, yeah.
Agreed.
Mood out the ass, which, as you know, that's another reason why I love it. Like, give me the mood and the atmosphere and the style, and I'll eat for days. Yeah.
It's definitely a mood. And then, last but not least, we have Occult Bayman wrote in, lovely Peter.
We love Occult Bayman.
That's right. And he said, after thinking about it, it's probably the best movie based off a video game I've seen.
Yeah. Like we said,
exactly.
It's definitely among the better options for sure.
The bar is set so low for video game adaptations that, like, it's subterranean, really.
Honestly, guys, I think the best video game movie I've seen is like Sonic the Hedgehog or something, and I thought that is okay as well, right? So yeah, it's not very high. Yeah. So once again, we don't have any calls on the horrific hotline, but if you'd like to call and leave us a voicemail, you can do so at 1-902-418-8620. We're going to keep plugging it. Hopefully we can get some calls one of these episodes, get conversation going between us and you. But if you're not following us already, you can do so at It Slays Podcast on basically every different social media, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, Slasher, because I'll mention that because Rowan will kill me if I don't. And if you'd like to support the podcast in a different way, if you have a couple of bucks to toss our way over on patreon.com/itslayspodcast, it'd be greatly appreciated. And if you don't have any bucks to toss our way, that's fine as well. We appreciate you taking the time to listen and, engaging with our content online.
And then this is where I pop in and remind you to go to Spotify, go listen to the It Slays Podcast Horrific playlist. I've got some songs lined up. I've got to add them on there. I've got some stuff from Fresh. I've got some stuff from X. And I might have to put some Silent Hill on here. I always like when we have to put music on from like X and Fresh, because like you're obviously just putting like the jams on.
Yeah.
That like, so 1 minute you're just listening to like the theme song, the Halloween, and the next thing you're listening to like some 70s classic rock song.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that's how we like to do it, all sloppy like that.
And then you're going to like the moody Silent Hill music right after that.
Yeah, exactly.
That's right. It's a mood. So last but not least, we have to announce our upcoming movie that we'll be reviewing next episode, and it was Mike's pick. Mike.
It was a Mike pick, and it's going to be so much fun. It is the wonderful, I guess you could call it a cult film. I feel like it's not exactly a huge blockbuster, but people who are in the know really know it and have a lot to say about it, and it is called Possession.
I am super excited.
Check it out.
So am I.
It is, it's kind of widely available now. I feel like there's some Blu-rays and stuff out of it, and it's probably on a streaming service in the States and all that. So definitely give it a watch. Sam Neill and Isabelle Adjani, two like brilliant actors. So and there's lots of really cool artwork like online for it if you're into that. So yeah, check it out and then come listen to the podcast.
So every single review,
let us know all the weird thoughts you have on it, because there's going to be lots of them.
Every single review on my Letterboxd is a 5-star or a 4.5 star. So yeah, I'm excited.
yeah, it's going to be a time. It's definitely one of those movies that like you will remember.
Awesome.
Put it that way. Whatever you think about it, you will remember it.
So I think that is everything for this evening. As always, thank you for all the support, and we will be back in 2 weeks with Possession. I am your humble host, Rowan.
It's Mike.
And I'm Colton.
See you later.
We're going to expand our weekly video segment to take you into the back shelves of your local video store, back where it says horror videos and where kids are devouring some awful films that we call the video nasties.
Are you freebasing? Inquiring minds want to know.
I have to break free from this culture of mechanical reproductions and the thick incrustations dying on the surface.
From the prime time, bitch!
The pain, I can assure you, will be exquisite. As for our deaths, come with me and be immortal.
We have such sights to show you.
Gotta return some videotapes.